Good evening. I'd like to call to order the school committee meeting for tonight, Monday, October 28th, 2019. I ask that those able please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is to the back of the room.
Right here.
Oh, it is. Oh, sorry. It's right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As a reminder, this meeting is being taped by our very own Dartmouth Community Television, as well as our high school students, to be replayed at various times over the course of the week. You can also find the recordings of this meeting listed on the Dartmouth High School TV Media YouTube channel. And I just want to ask everyone that you please turn off your cell phones to silent or at least vibrate. Roll call, please.
Carol Karafotis. Here. John Nunes.
Yep.
Kathleen Amaral.
Here.
Chris Oliver.
Yep.
Shannon Jenkins.
Here. Okay. A little early, so 6:31. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. We have allotted 10 minutes, per usual, for public comment from the audience on any topic on this evening's agenda. I ask that if you choose to come up to speak, that you come up to this podium, that you state your name, that you please keep your statements to just 2 minutes. And please do not come to speak if you are simply going to reiterate what has already been said before you. I just ask this respectfully so that we can hear from as many people as this 10-minute time slot allows for. So please feel free to come up.
Can I also add something?
Absolutely.
And also, just as a reminder that this is public comment, we will not be answering or getting into a debate with you over any of these items at this time. Some of the items that you may be addressing to us will be coming up later on tonight's agenda, and at that time, this committee will take those under advisement.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Renee Vieira, and I'm the president of the Dartmouth Educators Association. And tonight, I would just like to say on behalf of all the DEA members here this evening that we ask that you support and continue to talk to the town administration regarding our healthcare costs in this town. We also ask that this evening, when you go into executive session, that you just continue to consider fair COLA % raises for employees in town. And we look forward to positive future bargaining sessions. We want to continue to bargain in good faith. And once again, we welcome any school committee members to attend any of our bargaining sessions at any time at all. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank
Vieira.
you.
I hope no one minds if I pretend that that applause was for me. Is that all right? Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Pereira. I'm a Dartmouth resident, former school committee member, and current chair of the Dartmouth Veterans Advisory Board, as well as a member of the Dartmouth Education Foundation. I want to thank you for allowing me to take a couple of moments to address the committee and the community. I rise today to provide some short remarks strongly in support of the Dartmouth Indians name and our logo. I had thought about over the last couple of weeks this kind of grand speech with this, that, and the other, but I received a call this weekend from an old friend of mine, Jacob Ventura, who is a Dartmouth native, Dartmouth alumni, and also a member of the Wampanoag tribe, who, as you folks now know, if you didn't know before, helped design the logo that we currently use. And in my conversation with him, he also put me in touch with Cheryl Andrews Maltese, who is the president and the chairperson of the Wampanoag tribe that encompasses this entire area. She's also a Dartmouth High alumnus, and she helped, along with her brother, design the current logo that we have now. So we're really at a historic moment right now, and historic for the better. In the conversations that I had with them, and in a letter that Jacob submitted to you folks this afternoon, Not only is the Wampanoag tribe proud of the design, helped design the logo, that they also want to establish a formal partnership with the town and with the schools to help educate our future generations about the tribe, the design, the logo, etc. So I ask that you adhere to their wishes, that you support the Wampanoag tribe, the community, the will of both the tribe and the community, and do not in any way look to change the logo, our name, or look to even establish some committee or group that would even think about doing so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me just a few minutes. My name is Laysel Hall. I'm the president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, commonly known as the NAACP, the New Bedford branch. The New Bedford branch was established in December of 1917 and has served the New Bedford greater community for over 100 years. I speak on behalf of our membership and on behalf of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The mission of the NAACP is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic quality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and well-being of all persons. Previously, I emailed a letter to Superintendent Dr. Gifford on behalf of the NAACP and its membership regarding state legislation on school mascots and concerns around the Dartmouth High School Indian. There's currently a bill working its way through the state legislature, which would create a commission to look at the representation of Native Americans on the state seal and flag, and another to end the practice of using Native Americans as mascots. The anti-legislation would affect about 40 school districts in the state, and Dartmouth is one of them. Other states have already enacted similar legislation. It's a discussion long overdue, and one that the school district must grapple with before needlessly spending taxpayer money on symbols that may be retired. More importantly, however, the expropriation of Native American identity is a moral discussion that the community ought to have, and it's an issue that affects how safe and included Dartmouth students of color really are. The NAACP New Bedford branch has endorsed the anti-mascot legislation, and several of our members and friends have raised the issue of a public discussion with the school committee. I ask that you please hear them. We ask that you please conduct an inclusive public discussion of the continued use of race-based mascots in the 21st century. Again, we respectfully request for the Dartmouth School Committee to form a task force or working committee comprised of Dartmouth community members, local community members, local Native and Indigenous leaders, groups, and organizations, to first investigate the current history of the Dartmouth High School Indian mascot, as there seems to be some inconsistency around the history and how the mascot came to be. And second, to hear the community about the mascot and discuss the future direction of the Dartmouth Indian. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like that's it. No, anybody else?
The MCAS on the agenda.
No.
No, you're free to just say your name and, thank you.
My name is Eric Andrade, and my daughter's a freshman at Dartmouth High School. And coming into the school, one of the things that bothered me and made me uncomfortable about her coming into the school was the school's name and the reference of the school as the tribe. I've read articles where members of leadership and school committee had mentioned that it was a sign of respect. And I think it is something that needs to be rethought, in particular to refer to the school as the tribe. And in addition, this is the land of the Pokanoket, Aponagansett tribe, and to refer to First Nation people as Indian from Christopher Columbus' mistake is to not call you by the correct name. If I were to refer to you as, or if my daughter was to come to the school and refer to her teacher in the wrong name, that'd be an act of disrespect. So to refer to the Pokanoket people from Aponagansett as Dartmouth Indians, as if they're owned by Dartmouth, and in the wrong name, is a sign of disrespect. And in addition, she just had a holiday that was recognized by this school that is claiming to have great respect for indigenous community where we are on the land of, and that holiday was referred to as Christopher Columbus Day. And I think that's something, if you are in a agreement that there should be great respect held for the folks whose land we're on, there should be a rethinking of that holiday to rename that holiday Indigenous Peoples Day, and also to no longer refer to the university as the tribe. That's a sign of disrespect to the actual tribes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Megan. I am a local Native American. I'm a Pecasset Wampanoag. I sit on the council. I was asked to come here today to offer a voice for some of the local Native Americans in the area. It's a topic that I don't think we can find a resolution today. As the Pecasset Wampanoag tribe, we are just asking to develop a group, have an open discussion, so we can really find out local Native Americans' feelings. We want the children of Dartmouth and the surrounding areas to be educated on Native American culture, that the injustices that they faced in this area, the wars that they fought in these tribal lands. I think it's important, to refer to the mascot as an Indian. That's referring to a people as a race. We don't really do that with any other race of people. So we just asked to open up the forum for a discussion to really find out what other Native Americans in the area are feeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming up.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. So next on our agenda, we have approval of the minutes, our regular session minutes of October 7th, as well as executive session minutes of October 7th. Take them separately. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the regular session minutes.
Second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. I will entertain motion for the executive session minutes.
So move, Madam Chair, with the stipulation that they be held until the matter for which they were intended is complete.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next, we have on our agenda, we have student representative report. And we have Sophia Waite here to update the committee about activities taking place at Dartmouth High School.
Hi, I'm Sophia Waite. I'm just going to give you a brief look at what's happening in the school right now. So we've kind of settled into the school year. We're past the beginning of the year jitters. Most everyone knows how to get to where they're going, and we've settled into the actual school, and it actually feels like normal. We've had several outstanding fall seasons this year, including the field hockey team, which has earned the 11th seed in the upcoming state tournament. The field hockey tournament will travel to Plymouth North on Saturday, November 2nd to compete. Our volleyball team is currently 19-0 and is likely to have the top seed in the upcoming tournament, which is amazing. Seeding for the upcoming tournament will take place tomorrow. Our boys and girls soccer teams have qualified for state tournaments, and they're still looking to see their seeding. That will be released on Friday. The varsity cheer team competed on Mulberry at the Invitational Champion competition yesterday with a solid scoring of 8th place with 0 deduction performance. The marching band is having another outstanding season this past weekend with earning 1st. They also got a caption for Best Music, Overall Effects, and Percussion. So we're coming up to this Wednesday, and the junior and sophomore students are going to be taking the PSATs. This is funded by the school, so none of the students have to pay for it. And it's a really good opportunity for the juniors to look at what's going to be happening in the SATs and to look towards scholarships that could be earned. There are different levels of scholarships that are available, but it's all just a great opportunity to prepare for the SATs, which is a very important test. And then for the sophomores, such as myself, it's a good opportunity to take it twice to really get the handle on standardized testing, which is something we're going to be exposed to our entire lives, and that to learn testing skills such as time management and learning to really take your time. And it's going to give us a look into that world and something that we might not have the possibility to do, and we might not think to do it without the school's help. So that's pretty much what's happening. We have had a great month, and we're really looking forward to putting our best foot forward in November.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Thank you. Ooh, she's quick.
We don't blame you. Great job.
Good job, Sophie.
She's incredible. She's a sophomore. Wow.
All right. Yeah, I do. I'm just going to find my wonderful little piece of paper that I got.
We have some presentations coming up. However, we
Madam Chair, if I could just digress for a second. We do have a young man in the audience this evening, Tyler Ferrara. He's from Troop 74 of the Boy Scouts of America, and he's picked a great night to be here because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and he is working on his preliminary report for a merit badge. So Tyler, can you just stand up and wave to people so they can see you? But thank you for being here. Good luck with your report, and good luck as you continue on in scouting.
Great. So next on our agenda, we have some presentations. Our first presentation is the school improvement plan, Dartmouth High School. So Ross Tebow will present the school improvement plan for the high school. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to present the Dartmouth High School School Improvement Plan. It's my pleasure to be here this evening, although in the future I'll look to schedule it a less crowded meeting. So the first, oh good, we skipped right to Dartmouth High School, perfect. I think Tracy Oliveira, Director of Teaching and Learning, did a fantastic job at our last school committee meeting, just kind of presenting the district view, and the high school is certainly very much in alignment with the work that has been going on in the district for the past several years. One of the things, one of the pieces of the plan that I really enjoy is that we're engaged in the important work, and so as a result, every year it looks very similar to the year prior, and that's because the work we're addressing is really the work that needs to take place in the school. Last year, our plan centered around launching blended and personalized learning with the assistance of the Highlander Institute. This year, we're just looking to continue and to expand our use of blended, personalized, and project-based learning, not as standalone events, but as a core instructional strategy, something that we recognize is just good teaching and learning. And so they're not things that we check off and say we're done. It's a way of designing lessons so that we're engaging students and meeting them where they are and making sure all of their needs are being met. So we've already started this work. We have a second.
Mr. Tebow, if you're going to have sidebar conversations, we ask you to do it outside of the meeting, please. Thank you.
So we're already well into the work, and we started our second cohort with the Highlander Institute. And one of the things that really has pleased me is that we have some teachers who participated in the first cohort who voluntarily came back in a second year and are now serving kind of as teacher leaders on that in that work and being good mentors for the newest cohort of teachers that are engaged in the blended personalized and project-based learning. In addition to that, we have additional departments represented this year. So we're excited about that work as we continue to expand capacity around that. In terms of access and equity, our major area of focus in that area is around improving the efficiency and effectiveness of our student support teams. We have a new assistant principal this year, Mr. Gill, and Mr. Martin, and he have worked very closely along with members of our counseling department to really improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the student supports that all students receive. They've identified some common protocols and practices and published those so that the staff becomes aware and so that we don't have students who fall through the cracks. In terms of community engagement, our focus this year is really on surveying parents to see which of our efforts are most effective in communicating with them. We do a lot, right? We use Instagram, we use Twitter, we use our website. There's the district app. There's the marquee in front of the school. It's really could be a full-time job to be the public relations officer here. And so we really want to just hone what we're doing and make sure that we're directing our efforts, because there's only so much time in the day to being the most effective in that regard. And so our plan there is to survey all of our parents, take a look at that survey, and then focus our efforts on what parents are identifying as being the best avenues of communication with them. So that's pretty much the school improvement plan for Dartmouth High School this year. And one other thing is I'd just like to thank members of the administrative team, all of the faculty members, who obviously implement this plan and do this work on a daily basis. I'd also like to thank the volunteers who serve on the school council as well, who provide important advice on the plan.
Who would like to start? Anybody have any
I
feedback?
guess I'm on the end, so I was hoping she'd look that way, Carol. No, I mean, I think it's great, the things that you are doing. I wonder, the headlines that were out, sort of, I guess the headlines in education news, there's been some studies that have come out about sort of questioning some of the models of personalized learning, particularly those that sort of rely really heavily on technology to deliver instruction. And so I wonder if you could just maybe talk a little bit about how you're doing it, because I'm pretty sure it's not the same way that these other places are doing it. And then also sort of how you're assessing the efficacy of that.
Sure. So one of the things that we try and share with teachers is that blended learning doesn't really even require technology. You can use blended learning as a strategy without technology. What we've implemented is a lesson study protocol. That's really what is the major part of this work that we do with Highlander. And so we meet in teams of educators, and we don't start with what blended model we're going to use, and we don't start with what technology we're going to use. We start with what are the learning outcomes that we're looking to achieve, what's the objective for the lesson, how does it align to the standards. That's where we start, and then we backwards design and plan from there. And so it could look different it does look different from class to class, whether in some classes it's a station rotation. If that's the case, it's because the team of educators that are meeting to design that lesson decided that was the best approach to achieve those academic outcomes. In another class, it could be a playlist where students are working through at their own pace, and the teacher's kind of circulating and facilitating and serving as a support. That's another model that might be used. Could you tell me the second part of your question?
So what sorts of assessments are you doing about the efficacy of those things?
So each lesson that we plan has some kind of either product, whether it be a project, or some other form of assessment. Again, we're looking to see if the kids learned what it was we wanted them to learn. In addition to that, we also do collect student feedback in terms of whether or not they found the structure of the lesson to be supportive for their learning. If not, why not? Or, you know, what changes could be made. So it depends on the lesson for that, you know, for that particular day. But those are two ways that we commonly solicit feedback.
Great.
Well, a large component is the collaboration between staff members, which is the
And I think that's great. I would also just say that one of the other research findings we've talked about is oftentimes when you ask students about what facilitates their learning, and then you correlate that to educational outcomes, the things they say they like don't necessarily produce education. So they all say they hate active learning, like they hate it because they feel a little bit lost. But a big part of the learning process is getting a little bit lost and then finding your way. So I think it's great, right, that you're doing multiple modes, because even though we should listen to our students, they don't always know what's best for them. That's true. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Tebow. I had the opportunity to come to the showcase night the other night with my daughter. I think you guys are doing a fabulous job. I like the community engagement piece, just trying to reach out as much as you can. One of the things, obviously, my background being technology, how do you find the one-to-one going at the high school?
So one of the benefits we have this year is the instructional technology specialist, and so I think in year one it went fairly smooth, but I think that in year two, the benefit of having Jennifer Thomas on staff to support our teachers as they continue to integrate the Chromebooks and other digital tools is instrumental. We're not where we're going to be yet, obviously.
Sure.
But you know, every day you come in and you see teachers using different tools, trying new tools and new apps for different purposes. So, you know, I'm very pleased and impressed with all of the teachers' ingenuity in terms of how, you know, they're constantly looking for new tools and new apps that can be used with the Chromebook. So I guess the answer would be it's a work in progress, but I've been delighted with the progress that our teachers are making.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
John?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tebow. Very excellent and thorough. You know, you have the privilege of being the last one that we have to see type of deal. And the nice that
I was hoping there'd be no questions, but that
no, not happening. But seriously, the one nice thing as we've gone through all of these is the continuity that's in all of them, and that's what's appreciated. And I just appreciate again the community aspect of it, and also, you know, the second round of the cohorts is great. So I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
I too thank you for your presentation. I just have a couple of questions. Your first cohort, how was that determined? Is that by subject matter, teachers that are interested?
So last year, ahead of the work, we put out a survey to faculty who wanted to jump in and be the tip of the spear, if you would. They wanted to be the first to volunteer to participate in blended and personalized learning and figure out what that even is, right? Because that's another thing, is that blended and personalized learning means something different to just about everyone you speak to. So figuring all that out and creating a vision for Dartmouth High School was part of that first cohort of teachers. And I think we had like 25 teachers and administrators who worked with Highlander last year. And we have about the same number this year. And again, this year was voluntary. Teachers were encouraged to participate in that work. And so, again, like I said, this year we have additional departments that weren't represented in the first cohort of work, but have stepped forward and are now represented in on our second cohort.
So if they're not included in the cohort, if they're interested in participating in teaching in that manner, are they supported by members that are in the cohort, or?
So yes, and in addition to that, through the ed eval process, every educator is required to have goals, professional practice goals, and some sample professional practice goals as suggestions have been shared with the staff, and they've adopted them. We had a number of teachers who last year did not participate in the cohort but wanted to start to dabble in blended and personalized learning, and so they did that. This year the same thing has taken place. We also have a book study that correlates with this work. Bold School is the name of the book. Name of one of the books, and we have some teachers who have adopted that as their professional practice goal. So they're reading the book, which is focused on effective strategies for blended and personalized learning, and they're trying those out throughout the course of the year.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased with the work that's being done at the high school. I also like the idea of surveying the parents for feedback.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to realize when you get feedback from a group, 99% could be glowing, but the 1% that have a complaint is the one you tend to focus on all the time. But you're doing a great job up there at the high school, you and your staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't really have anything more to add other than each year in my tenure on this committee and your time here as a principal, just seeing the growth and the changes and with the vision in mind, it's nice to see, and just grateful to have you here in Dartmouth. So thank you.
Thank you.
And your staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we need to approve this?
We need a,
Yeah,
okay, so I will entertain a motion to.
I'll make a motion to approve the high school improvement plan.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Good work. Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Michelle Roy is going to present the most recent state assessment data for us. And I'm so grateful because you break it down so
This is our annual
steps that I
adventure
can
into assessment.
digest.
Well, we're just catching stride on MCAST again, right? So if you remember, our baseline year was 2017.
Right.
Last year was 2019 was our first year where we were almost completely computer-based because the high school went computer-based for grade 10 ELA and math, and field testing of science for the high school, and grade 5 and 8 science went computer-based. So we're almost completely computer-based, and we are in our third year of Welcome Back to MCAST, right? Remember we took a short trip with Park. So I'm going to walk you through a little review. I kept some of this familiar so that, we get a little bit better at this. We can dive deeper into some of the questioning, but just for a review. So high school science and the retest at the high school are still paper-based. Everything else is what we call next generation MCAS, and it is computer-based. They did some field testing with biology and physics to a portion of the students, and the state has maintained that the graduation requirements will be the same through the class of 2021 and 2022. What they're taking is the equivalent of the standard for graduation under the past system. They're drawing a line across to what it equals under the current system. So they made that commitment. I put the little picture of the ranges because every once in a while I have to remind myself of what they are. So you have that in your piece. But the top score under this new system is 560. So they are in 30-point intervals. So that exceeding expectation goes from 530 to 560, and they go down 30 points until we get to the 440. The target, at the very least, is the 500, which would put us at meeting expectations. I will say, when I look closer at this, this band, exceeding expectation and not meeting, are much smaller than the other two. So they're not one-to-one raw score, scaled score. There's actually a very narrow band at the top and a very narrow band at the bottom, looking more like the standard bell curve, if you remember that. So it is a little harder to meet exceeding than it is advanced in the old system. Just so keep that in mind. So this was the accountability piece I reviewed last year. The state is still, instead of one-to-one achievement and growth, we tend to favor growth. We feel like it tells us a lot about the students as well. They are still a 3-to-1 ratio with achievement and growth. Schools that don't have an ELL population of 20 or more don't get a component of that in their accountability, so the state divides up the points into the top two to give it the same 3-to-1. The high school has an added component, including graduation rate, extended engagement, keeping students in school beyond the 4-year component, and then the dropout rate. So that actually, they say, gets added in with the achievement to keep the 3-to-1 ratio. They haven't really made any changes on this other than to possibly put some additional coursework to include some of the computer science pieces as advanced coursework. Okay, so most of that is maintained the same. So our 10-year look at achievement, this will be the last year you'll see this because the composite piece is going to be phased out, so I thought you'd like to see one last piece. English is blue, math is green, science is red. You can see all three are around 95 to 98. The ceiling is 100. So it's a nice 3-year look. We'll say goodbye to this one, and we're going to move into scale score in the future. So you might still get the science in this for one more year. So I like to look at how we compare to the state, and then I like to look at how we do with the scale score, and then eventually we'll move to, you know, what that breaks down into question types and areas. But I always have to remind myself to celebrate the good parts because we're so focused on what we can improve on. But in this case, I'll tell you, this is ELA. So in grade 3, Dartmouth is blue and the state is yellow. You can see we're a little bit closer to the state, and in grade 4 we're still a little bit under, and then the gap, you know, moves larger as we move up. You know, everybody's taking computer-based assessment, so I can't always say it's the platform, but it is a little adjustment for the grade 3 students. The essay, the writing directly on the computer, but you know, that's the same thing for everybody, so we'll have to figure that piece out. We are looking this year in ELA at some of the the selected response, which we used to do in the past under MCAS to see how kids were doing on making decisions on some of those, because when you look at the questions, we feel like they could have done it. You know, we just have to take a look at some of those components on how the question was constructed. And that changes year to year, so we have to look at that distance from the state and see if that changed at all. This is a very busy slide, but I don't like to put a lot of slides. But so it has two pieces to it. One is, you know, how do students go from grade 3 to grade 10 in those 4 areas, not meeting, partially meeting, exceeding, and meeting. So you can see the green component is the meeting and the blue part is the exceeding. Now that grade 10 is on board in ELA, in the past it had done proficient and advanced, but you can see that it's a little more balanced. The state is really holding strong to that college and career readiness piece and not just an entry-level assessment. There's not a lot I can point out on this slide other than, you know, most of it seems to be in pretty good shape. I do like this piece with the scaled score for 2019, because if you remember from the first slide, our target is about 500, so I'd like to see the average scaled score. Okay, this isn't median, this is average. So all the students in that grade, for example, grade 3 has an average of 503.4. Okay, grade 8, 503.7. So in how they differ from the state. And the only place where we're slightly below the state is, again, grade 3. And then some people will say, well, you know, you may have gone up, but did the state go up, right? So that's that last column. So you can see in grade 3 across the state, students are getting used to the assessment, probably. We went up 4.1, the state went up a little bit more than we did, 5.3. You can see in grade 5, we have a nice large gap. We increased 6.2, the state increased 2.3. So that's sort of the lens I'm looking for. And then in grade 10, the first time we're looking at that scale score for ELA, we came in at 507.5, 506 for the state. We're higher than the state. And the last piece of information on this slide is that nice, healthy growth. Our target is 40 to 60. For the overall accountability, the state's looking for 50 as a district, so anything above 60 is considered high. Anything between 40 and 60 is typical. Okay. This one I added, don't go overwhelmed by this, but the growth is something we really work on. So this is a report that we get that gives us very high growth in the dark green. High growth, typical, low growth, very low. So we're looking for the darker greens to be larger. So something you can see, and the lighter colors to be smaller. So you can see, for example, grade 6 students in ELA, 23% very low growth. We've now got that down to 10, right? And 11% very high growth is now up to 37. So you want to see the top part getting larger in the darker greens and the lower parts getting smaller. And you can see some good examples of that as you go through all these growths. So you have those there, but that's, I think, a nice overall view of some of the improvement as we go through the years. And remember, 17 was the baseline year, so that's why we're starting there. All right, math, another big component. So again, what I'm looking for on this, you can see grade 3, and grade 4 compared to the state again, and then that gap getting larger. So how do we unpack that? And what does that mean? We'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the slide on what we're looking forward to this year. Again, the balance across, right? The greens and blues, expanding a little, pretty holding steady on the reds. Students who take MCATs alt, even though they may be progressing, are still considered not to have met the grade level standards, so they'll be in that category. And the 500s, again, is our target here. You can see some improvements. What's in red is where we would have went down. So we went down a little bit in grade 5, an 1/8 of a tenth. The state went down a little bit. The same thing with grade 7. We went down a little bit. The state went down. What's nice here is what you see in grade 8. We went up 2.5, the state went down 0.6. I'm not quite sure what substantial improvement is on that yet, but definitely, you know, upwards of, 5 is substantial. But as we settle in, I don't know how much exactly, that's going to work out to be, but 2.5 is certainly healthy. The state in we performed in grade 10, the first time you'll see this data, 509.5, 4 points above the state. That's a nice gap. We have been improving steadily on our growth, and we have another slide on that. So we are up in the typical range, almost at the midpoint at 50. Hopefully that trajectory continues to go up. Again, we're looking for the larger components growing and the smaller parts, getting smaller. This seems a little more balanced than the ELA. The ELA has a much more slanted improvement in the higher growth, but we do see small increments of those decreasing. Hopefully when we get some of that low performer data a little bit earlier, we can really target some of that. And we have some of the work that we're doing at the high school with our block where we allow students to choose where they might want to go for some help. So maybe we'll see some improvement in that as well. Science, again, 5 and 8 is computer-based. They've always had a nice gap with the state. 5 is adjusting to the changing of standards. Remember that a few years ago? We'll see the same thing happening in grade 10. This is a group that's proficient or higher. So again, this may be one of the last few years we see some of this, but this was the old system. And you can see we've had a nice healthy gap with the state through the years in that category. This part is a little confusing. I can get some of this information because this is where we're shifting. So we still have some of that old CPI, which is the cap of 100, right? With the new system of 500 being meeting expectations, and still a little bit more of that 100 cap. So it's a kind of half in, half out. But you can see some nice difference from the state here in science across the board. Okay, I have these little stars for grade 10 science because we're still talking advanced and proficient and not that college and career readiness move that they did with the other assessments. So we are working on that. This is probably one of my more favorite ones. So this is our growth. Growth for 10 years in grade 10. The band in yellow is the target. So you can see for ELA, they've had nice steady growth in that range up at 51, which is above the state target. And if you remember, 5 years ago, we were down quite a bit in math, and now we're steadily moving up, hopefully to break the 50-point mark. They've done quite a bit of work on that with their curriculum and their assessments, their pathways, all of that, and the move coming up from the elementary and middle school. So hopefully that continues on that trajectory. We look at our new accountability, which is not just all performers, but low performers as well. Remember, they're 50-50, not the high needs group in the past, just anybody, whether how they're performing. So our bottom quarter of our students. And what I wanted to see on this was whether the growth was any different. So the growth in grades 3 to 8 in ELA, you can see between low performers and all performers is pretty level, right? And for math, the same thing. We do see that gap in grade 10, and if you can remember Ms. Tebow talking about the PACE block, and we're hoping to service these students during the school day. We can either match them up with teachers that they're selecting from ones they've had last year and this year, and improving on either the feedback they're getting in ELA or just areas that they're struggling in math to hopefully close that gap. So we're happy to have that addition this year on their schedule. Again, another busy slide, but what I was trying to look at here is, if there's any place that we can get information from the assessment in a broad lens without, bringing you through every single question. So for ELA, we chose to look at the types of questions. So the constructive response, the essay, and the short response. If you remember last year, we talked about the essay quite a bit. We were doing a lot of work with increasing opportunities for students to read and write with feedback. So grade 3 was one that we really had declined last year. You can see that we've improved, 14 points on that. The gap with the state is closed from 4 below to 1 below, so the state itself must have improved in this area, but it's still nice to see our efforts in that. Grade 4 went down 9, but you can see our gap with the state just moved slightly. So again, what was that prompt? So it looked like it was harder across the state, and some healthy essay work in grade 5 and grade 6. The gap's moving to 11 and 9. Those are strong. A little dip in 7 and 8, but again, the gap with the state is moving. So my guess is the state also went down in that. And then in grade 10, 61, this is their first time under this online system. They're down a little bit from the state. So a couple things we're working on. What I said, we'll continue to work on the increased opportunities for students to read and write with growth-producing feedback. Really focusing on the mini lesson, making sure it's intentional and efficient in that workshop model. Reducing the teacher talk and more small group work and students getting what they need, And then what we talked a little bit about with these constructive responses, is it experience? Is it that there's a close confuser, or they're not reading through all 4 options and they're picking the first one that seems to make sense? You know, those old things we used to do in the past with MCAS, bringing us back to that now that we're kind of steady in this area. Or is it comprehension? Do they really not understand what they're being asked? So those are some of the things that now we can, you know, have this assessment for 3 years. We can sort of start to take a look at that. Again, another busy one, but I just wanted to take a look at the areas that were there any ones in math that we were falling down in? The first column is just the number of points. So while geometry, you know, has had some up and downs, it's a small component of the test, whereas operations and algebra, expressions and equations, it's a much larger piece. So when I weigh whether we went up or down, how many questions there were, I have to take that into consideration. But you can see there's steady performance in this as we move up, some nice big gaps. Where we went down a little, the state must have went down because it's really negligible. And then this high school one is very busy because I couldn't figure out a way to improve on that. There are so many areas that they report in, but you can see almost all of them are black. There's a couple little red ones where we're slightly below the state, so that's really nice to see. And I didn't have a way to tell you how many points each of them were because there's just so much. But it's what we do to unpack the assessment and to kind of look at those types of questions that they're asking in each of them, you know. So you've heard us talk about our bringing some of that lesson study, personalized learning model to the elementary. We've sat through one round. It's been pretty impressive on the discussions among teachers and the feedback and the working with the kids as we do some of our observations and then debriefing after. We do tell the staff what we like about what we saw. They tell us what they think they might change next time or what their questions are. It's really a nice process. The lesson designs, this is what we're trying to look at also. So moving from concrete to representation to the abstract. So what are we doing to model some of those mathematical understandings, not just straight concrete to abstract? What do we do to transition in the middle so that kids can develop their mathematical understanding with some of these components? And then what I just talked about are systems for interventions. We've had a system in the elementary school. We've improved and increased our supports at the middle, and for the first time we have that PACE block at the high school, so where students can access help during the school day. So we're really looking forward to that. And finally, the accountability data. So we had accountability data in 2018 for the first time. What they have done this year is they've taken the two and work them together. If you remember the old 4, 3, 2, 1, one counted 4 times. All right, so we're moving back toward maybe 3 years being counted. They say it's more accurate depiction of what's happening. So what they did, 2018 is 40% of this number. 2019 is 60%. So in some cases, some schools did very well in 2019, but the two going together, you'll see a smaller improvement than if I had just put the 2019 number, okay? And the other piece here is a percentile rank. So ME meant that they met or exceeded their targets. SP is substantial progress. The state is telling us 71% of the schools received their target, which is 50 or higher, which means that they are improving. Okay, now we all want to meet or exceed our targets, right? So we are working toward that. The district at itself is no longer a product of its lowest performing school, if you remember. So for the district, all the students are counted together. And the other little difference is anybody who comes in after October 1st doesn't count for the schools, but they do count for the district. So the district gets everybody. So we are at 70. Again, our target is 75. As far as ranking across the state, you can see 3 of our schools are in that top third. We have one very close to that, and then the high school is the 50th, which means it's in the middle. Again, our target is really in that top third, so we'd like to see them all about, in the upper 60s. So. And just a review of what we're working on, you've heard all the school improvement plans, so a lot of this will be a repeat. I'll just highlight a few of the new ones. But we have student support services. This also includes mental health supports, our tiered systems of supports, our PACE block, our components of RTI and PBIS, right? We have our curriculum development, which is including our STEM pathways that you've heard us talk about, our mapping of units in Rubicon, and our assessments that folks have been working on, and then increasing opportunities for students to read and write with feedback. Our professional development, always we base our strands on a staff survey that's reviewed by the Curriculum Council. The new strand is to be determined when the Curriculum Council meets, but ones that are ongoing are SEL, special ed. We do offer some of the components of recertification with ELL as well for the SEI PDPs. And then, as always, we have embedded coaching. We completed our instructional technology coaching model at the high school this year, so that's new. The school improvement plans had the alignment of the teaching and learning action steps that you've seen. We always look at our goal setting process. The vertical teams continue. We have a new team, engineering, that's going to be middle school and high school. We have a lesson development piece that we're working on in math. And then on the bottom, the horizontal teams across grades are ongoing with our L3, our literacy leaders, our CIA, which is looking at the math, and all of our professional learning communities. So that's everything we have. So the last sheet just shows you, you have it in your piece, it's very small. It shows you even if the district declined, sometimes it's like a 0.3, and it's, it's still in decline, but you can look at that sheet, everything in red will tell you. So, maybe chronic absenteeism went down a little, but it means 18 students. It's I tried to write in everything so you could see where the change was, so you could understand decline could be a very small number or it could be a very large number. So, yep.
Can I just follow up on that example for people in the audience? Right, I see at the high school there is a 1 student drop in the extended engagement rate, which is a loss of 4 points on a scale of 12, right? That's 1 student that lost 4 points,
so
which
just
just illustrates
more
that point
critical
right
eye.
there. Yeah,
When it says
right.
declined, you have to look a little further. What does that really
right,
mean?
right.
We went from 4.2 to 5.8. That was, 11 kids out of, how many?
Right.
1,100, right?
Right.
Or whatever school we're looking at. But in this case, it was the high school.
Yeah.
So, and each student gets counted once. So, if you have, 25 absences, you don't count twice. It's just, you just miss 10%. It doesn't matter if you were on vacation or at the doctor's. It's just you were missing from the instruction that day.
Right.
And
Great.
Going to start over here?
Yes.
well, thank you.
Thank
I know I
you.
went fast, but
It's a lot, but thank you. You break it
gives
down.
you a synopsis of where we are. We're working on the math. Working on looking at some of the question types, and all the schools are taking a critical eye.
Great.
Well, thank you for your presentation, as always. It looks like we're growing, and that's what we want, continuous improvement, and we're trying to address the areas that we need to work on. I know historically ELA has always been stronger than math.
We're taking on that challenge.
I know. Is that statewide too, or is that?
Why?
No,
Is
I
it
said
statewide? Yes.
Is it statewide?
Probably, if I remember the old system with remember the 90s, the ELA was always a little bit higher.
And we're taking
trend.
steps at the middle school and the high school to.
Well, they used to always, miraculously go up when, remember the days where they played with the thresholds a little bit.
Right.
But you got to compare, 8 to 8 and 7 to 7, and not across grades. because the assessments are different. And they are tweaking them a little. I forgot to mention, so the essay may be worth a few less points and the other part a few more. So each year they tweak the balance of the questions too. But to your point in math, sometimes writing and some of that responses is a little more difficult for the kids to work on how to explain their answers. But hopefully we can provide them opportunities to do that in their regular day.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Roy. Question I had, on the graph that you had the students doing relative to the state, and it was the percentage of students meeting, of exceeding expectations. That meant that they had a score of higher than the 530. They would have been between that 530 meeting expectations and 560 exceeding. It was one of the first ones, to be honest with you. Nope.
So anything above 500 is meeting expectations, yes.
Okay, so they're going on the partially meeting expectations then, okay.
Yep. Chris? Yep, and that's an average.
Yeah.
Yep, so that includes,
Yeah.
very highs and the very lows.
Very lows,
Yep.
yeah, right. And I think I've asked this question before. If I have, I apologize. But we can track what the questions that the students, a majority of students get wrong, so that we know what has to be worked on. And again, I realize you made the comment that they change every year.
So we can and we can't. We can see how they performed on each questions. We can order them with the gap from the state. We can't always see all of the questions, which is a little frustrating. In grade 10, we can see them all, but some of them they don't release all of them, but we can tell what standard it was in. So if that standard rises to a level of underperforming, then we can kind of unpack that. But we don't get to see every single question.
But we do have an opportunity to go back and say, here's maybe what we have to work on a little bit more.
Yes, and the state has a digital library of items in the past, so we might not be able, if we want more practice on a particular area, we can always, borrow from that bank now that it's growing 3 years. So we do have more samples of what those questions might look like.
Okay, very good. Thank you, ma'am. Excellent. Love it.
Thank you, John. Chris?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Roy. So in regards to the additional indicators, specifically I'm looking at, well, there's the two of them, the chronic absenteeism and then the advanced coursework completion. If I'm reading this correctly, for chronic absenteeism, the general aggregate for all high school students, we had a total possible points of 4, and we earned 3 for our high school, which is rather good. However, when we look at the general aggregate for our non-high school grades, we scored 0.
Are you looking at the last?
I'm looking at that last one, yes.
Yeah, very small, so if I bring it up, it's going to be.
Yeah, no problem. So we scored 0 out of 4 points for that, and then another for the other subgroup, we also scored 0 out of 4. So is my understanding that chronic absenteeism is 10% of the school year, which would come out to 18 days for us. Yep. So I'm just curious, are we as a school district doing anything? Because while this is only a very small percentage of the overall data that we're receiving from the state on MCAS, is the school district doing anything to target those students who are chronically absent?
Yes. So some buildings, and actually what I've heard of what they're doing, some buildings are calling parents and having that discussion. Some are having teachers outreach when kids are absent to see if that will make an improvement. The word that, whether you're taking a kid on vacation, it still counts as attendance. That is being put out there. And this starts in grade 1. It doesn't just start in grade 3.
Right.
So you may be thinking, well, my student's in grade 1 or 2, it's okay if I go on vacation, and getting that word out as well. But again, you're going from, I can't read it from here, but let's say that's a 3.3 to
It is.
right. So you're going from 11 kids to 29 kids,
Right.
Out of that whole lowest performing group. This slide doesn't tell you how many are in that group, but it's a large group for
Sure.
the district.
Yeah.
But yes, we do that. We also have, you know, what we had with the Chapter 222 attendance letters. Those go out when kids are absent 5, 10. We invite families in to come work with us and make a plan. That is ongoing, but we're trying to inform ourselves a little bit more about what will be most effective on getting that information out, and so that they understand it is a component. It's a 10% component. You know, it might not be a, you know, the 67.5%, but it's still a component, and we want the kids in, you know, because we know when they're in, we're you know, they're afforded the instruction and the you know, collaboration with their peers, right? So so we do keep an eye on it. We do try to work on it. Our focus is really on the achievement and growth, but yes, it's a component that we work on.
Okay.
So.
No, great overall presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Janet?
So this is great. I need to come in sometime and talk to you to understand growth, because I still can't quite figure out how they calculate that, so I don't want to get bogged down in that. But I do also want to say, you know, you highlighted, right, that we're slightly lower in 3rd and 4th grade, and there's some concern, and I'm glad we're looking at it. But of course, an alternative interpretation is we don't have data for grades 1 and 2, that it may be that our students are starting out well below where the state is, and after just a couple of years, right, because we do, well, socioeconomic status isn't the perfect correlation for, it's highly correlated with success, and the socioeconomic status in Dartmouth is lower as compared to the rest of the state. So the alternative explanation for the grade 3 and 4 scores is that we're taking kids who are below where the state is, and we've already accelerated them up to where the state is by 3rd and 4th, and we continue to accelerate them beyond that in grades above that. And so I do just want to point that out, because it says something positive about our school. It's not like we should be really concerned, and we should still be looking at that, but it could mean that we've done a lot already with these students, right, and bringing them up already. As we know, I think Renee even has a sign on this, right? We are among the lowest, 10% of districts in terms of 80% of schools have more funding than us, right? But our results are really good.
Pretty good.
And so I think that's an alternative interpretation of that. We can't disprove it because we don't have the data for that. But it just says that I think that our educators are doing a lot with a little. And so I just want to point out that potential interpretation, and then you look at the rest of the scores, right? We're doing better than the state with far less in resources than other districts in the state. And I think that says a lot for the people who work in our schools, who are doing so much for our kids. Yeah. That's it.
Thank you. This is a lot. Thank you. I was able to comprehend it as you were going through it, but now I really don't have any specific question, other than you mentioned that you know, this is taking into account the regular MCAS as well as those students who are participating in the MCAS as an alternative. And I know we were never really over the threshold even prior to ESSA as far as the 1% for the MCAS. Could you let me know?
I do not know.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I know that we were just slightly over even prior to that. I can just only imagine we're probably below that now, I'm guessing.
I don't know either.
Okay.
I don't know. But the cap is still the cap, and
Right.
you know, when we do get, I thought it was 2, but when we do get close to it, the state does give us feedback on.
Okay. Yeah.
But you know, we do our due diligence with, you know, those students who need alt assessment, you know, and those students who can have the opportunity to try the regular assessment too.
Right.
We do both.
Yeah, it goes both ways, and I do see that in even the families that I work with on a professional level. Those conversations are being had, and those students are afforded that opportunity to do their best as they can. So thank you. No, great job. That's all I have.
You're welcome.
All right. So on our agenda next, I don't know if you want to stay up there or go back to your seat. I think you are under new business. We're going to discuss Michelle Roy will discuss the school committee policy JKAA, physical restraint prevention and behavior support policy.
You must be tired.
So we we are in the process again of doing what we used to call a coordinated
Michelle.
program review.
Mm-hmm.
Take the microphone.
And now called tiered focus monitoring. So through that state review process, they give us feedback on our policies and our practices, our protocols. So one requirement that we had was to update a component of our restraint policy to make very explicit, and you'll see it at the end of that first paragraph. In all circumstances, the use of medical and mechanical restraints is strictly prohibited. That was in a component of our procedural guidelines, but not explicit in our policy.
Okay.
So we had to add that into the policy. The review team is coming on December 12th, so the hope is to have the first read and the second read and have that in place for the monitoring when they visit.
Okay.
So that's the only change to the policy, is that last sentence in the first paragraph.
I was wondering because I see it sort of like explicitly exactly the way that it should be, and I wasn't quite sure. I do remember seeing it, and like you said, and just it wasn't explicit in this actual policy. So this is a first read?
Yes.
Okay, so no vote on this tonight, but just to, anybody have any feedback?
No, I'm fine.
That's what it is.
Sounds good. All right, thank you. So that will go back to policy committee, or will come back to us
It'll come back to us.
for a
If
vote.
we have no changes for policy, then we'll just put it for a second read in our November meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next on our agenda, we have, under new business, the proposed school committee meeting dates. We have dates scheduled through December, and these new dates are January through March. You just open that up. Yeah, thank you. No. So, all right. So the ones we have scheduled through December 16th, the proposed January 13th, January 27th. I had already reviewed these. Now that January 27th would be the proposed public hearing for a vote on whether or not we adopt, again, school choice. February 10th would be the fiscal year 21 budget presentation. March 9th, discussion of fiscal year 21 budget. March 23rd, proposed public hearing for the budget. And so this, and then the April date is, this is most likely the date that we would meet with the Finance Committee and the Select Board.
Joint meeting.
Joint meeting. So does that look good to everyone?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Shannon.
there's some potential. I may have a conflict with the 13th, but in looking at the calendar, there is no other date to really do. So I think I will try. I'm at a conference that weekend. I will try to get back, but
okay.
I will do my best, but I'm not going to spend like $300 or $400 more on a flight to make it back here. So I will do my best to be back for that. I just want to let you know.
Hopefully you won't get snowed in.
Yes,
wherever
well,
you are,
yeah.
You know?
Well, my conference is in Puerto Rico, so
Oh,
if I can't
okay.
fly out because of snow here, I wouldn't be that sad.
You'll have to pull yourself off the beach.
That's right, yeah.
And just, of
Yeah.
course,
Safe
we'll be
travels.
scheduling some budget subcommittee meetings throughout that time as well.
time frame.
So.
Okay.
Yep. That's right. Those are good on my part.
Yeah, they look good for me. So sounds good.
That's fine.
All right. So no vote on that. That just kind of we agree on that. All right. And so next, under new business, we have listed discussion, our Dartmouth logo. We have heard from some nice people that came up, and so thank you for that. And a little context for those of you who are wondering why this is on the agenda. As a committee member, I received an email on June 28th from a resident regarding the logo. And because on June 25th at the State House, there was a there was a committee hearing, a joint committee hearing for 2 bills that are currently, and there was some articles in the paper you all may have read, social media, that there's legislation that it essentially was proposed last legislative cycle, and it died in committee. And so it was refiled this session. It's Senate Bill 247 and House Bill 443, entitled An Act Prohibiting the Use of Native American Mascots by Public Schools in the Commonwealth. And it was endorsed this session, I don't know about last session, by 11 senators and 16 representatives. And so on the 25th of June, there was a joint committee on education held a hearing, and along with like 30 other, there were like 300 and something bills in this committee. And so it was heard that day with a bunch of other bills, many of them related to school safety. And so it's in committee, and that's where we stand. It has until February 5th to be voted out of committee. If it does not vote out of committee, it will again essentially die, once again as it did last session. And then on September 3rd, we had a public meeting working group where we heard from residents, a few residents in opposition of the logo, and in support of our committee deciding to, considering making a change in advance of the Commonwealth making a change for us. And so we are here respectfully placing it on the agenda for discussion. So that's a little background for why we're here. And with that, I will open it up to my fellow committee members.
Would you like to start, Mr. Nunes? Or I can start. I'm happy to go first. That's fine.
Yeah, please.
I'm not from this community, right? And when I came to this community, I learned about the mascot, and I will say that I was somewhat surprised. But I have been told over the years that this is a sign of respect that the Wampanoags support. But when I come to do research about this, there is in fact no public record of the tribe's comment on this. We have the word of one school committee member who met with one superintendent who met with one member of a tribe. We heard from another school committee member tonight who spoke with 2 other members of the Wampanoag tribe. To me, that does not represent an opportunity for local tribes to have a say in this matter. And I think it's important that if we think that this is a sign of respect, that we listen to local tribes about what they think about this issue. Personally, I know this is going to make me highly unpopular in this community. I would support getting rid of the logo. The times have changed. The AP Style Guide no longer recommends the use of Indian when referring to Native tribes. They prefer and they recommend, as we heard one speaker say, that you should refer to members of a tribe by their tribal name. So you don't refer to someone as an Indian, you refer to them as a Wampanoag, because that is the name of their nation. So I think if we really want to respect local tribes, then we need to let them have a chance to say what they think about this. And it may be that they don't support my position, right? And I'm fine with that. It may be that they do, but I think we as a community, if we truly respect our tribal neighbors, need to have a chance for them to have an official say on the record. Public record, not hearsay, not secondhand, in a public forum, public record, to be allowed to state their positions and give us input to make a decision on this. As a result, I support the creation of a commission to look into this and to receive input from local tribes, from the community at large, for us to make an informed decision about this.
Thank you, Shannon. Next.
Go ahead, John.
Really want me to speak? Okay, thank you. First and foremost, thank you to everybody that sent emails. Probably to I would assume most of the committee got them. I know I got a bunch of them. I did print most of them out. I did look at them. I did try to read them. I know one I did not print out, I'll be honest with you, was sent to me in a secure email, and I've kind of talked about my computer experience and couldn't open it. So sorry, for not being able to do that. When we first talked about this back in September at our strategy meeting that we had type of deal, I'm going to kind of repeat some of the same stuff, but and I apologize for that, but just to get it out more in the public eye type of deal. Yeah, as just about a lifelong resident of this town, I moved into Dartmouth when I was 4. Yeah, I bleed green. I'm a graduate of Dartmouth High School. I was involved in the high school band. I was involved with athletics and, just as usual, just about anything else. So yeah, I bleed green. So I think you know where I'm headed here. We have, in my opinion, a lot more important things to worry about. We've got vaping, e-cigarettes, drugs, bullying. We got a fantastic presentation from Ms. Roy tonight about MCAS. We've still got some work to do. We've got social and economic issues that, affect this community and every community, not only in this state but in the country, okay? I think the legislature has a lot more important things that they've got to worry about. They're talking about spending, getting more money into education. Well, when you kind of look at the formula and what they're doing, we're not getting a lot more type of deal. You look at this $1.4 billion budget over the next 5 years for education, and we're getting squat, okay? Concentrate on what we need, and with no disrespect to anybody, work on the important things, okay? I do value, in all seriousness, everybody's opinion. Everybody's entitled to one, and we can all agree to disagree, and I respect my colleagues' opinion down there, no problem type of deal. If you read the Standard Times, the sports section, their sports editor emeritus, Buddy Thomas, has done a number of articles on 50 greatest, coaches, athletes, girls teams, boys teams, games, things of that nature. And towards the end of his 50, the last one that he basically did, he did an article about Volk and Dartmouth. And right in the article, because it was, I believe, a game from the 50s or 40s, I don't remember, but I remember it stuck out. We used to be called Little Green, okay? And I remember being in high school. I graduated in 1971. And I remember being in high school freshman year, one of my classes, and the teacher talking about, Volk was Big Green. So it always would be, Little Green beats Big Green type of deal. And that's kind of when the decision, from what I was told back then, back in the early 60s, they went to the Wampanoags, and they went to Dartmouth College because Dartmouth College was the Indians and got permission, and that's when it was changed to Dartmouth Indians type of deal. Where do we stop? Okay, well, as I said back then, yeah, I'm Catholic. Okay, so does Bishop Stang have to change the Spartans because the Spartans, persecuted the Christians, or the Blue Devils because that's anti-Christian? You got the Wareham Vikings, okay? You've got the Case Cardinals. Do I not like animals? Where do you stop, okay? Let's just figure out what we're going to do. I mean, God, take a look. If anybody watched Sunday Night Football last night with the Chiefs and the Packers, and even some of the colleges, Florida State still does it. Some of the colleges still do it. They do that tomahawk chop, and they're banging the drums, the big round Indian drums, per se, almost looks like the war drums when you watch the old cowboy and Indian movies type of deal. So where does it stop? Personally, I can't see doing anything. I won't vote for anything other than keeping the logo as the Dartmouth Indian. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, John. Chris?
I'll try to say something. I've been doing a lot of reading, and I know that there are a number of different organizations that have come out against using the Indian logo. But on the other hand, I have heard from a lot of people who have taken the time to write to me and indicate how important it is to them, and the fact that they feel that we have treated the Indian logo in Dartmouth with respect. There was a letter I received today and wanted to make a connection between the tribes and the Dartmouth school system, so as we teach our children, we have a better understanding of, what life was really like for the Wampanoags or the other tribes. I indicated that as a curriculum in our grade 3, we have taught about the different Indian tribes that have been in this area, and we have tried to treat them with a great deal of respect. On the other hand, when you look at different publications, they all indicate that it's probably not a good idea to use the Indian logo. So I agree with Shannon that we should have some type of commission where people come in and we can talk about this. I've heard from people who are I can't say that, Indians, who have said they have no problem with this. I've heard from people who, for instance, buy uniforms and buy sweatshirts for the different teams. And I mean, that's an expense that they've incurred. I just want to be fair to everybody. And maybe that makes me wishy-washy. But I just want to make sure we're making the right decision. So I would like to have further input from the different groups in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr.
Karafotis.
So sweet.
All right, so I guess it comes down to myself and Kathleen.
Kathleen reserves the right of the chair to talk last.
That's
to see
right.
if everybody matters.
Absolutely. So I've had a lot of opportunity to think about this since the topic first came up over the summer. We had, and this isn't the first time that this topic has come up. It's come up briefly over the past, my 7-year tenure that I've been here on the Dartmouth School Committee. It's come up once or twice before, not to this level. But what I found was after having our working session back in, I believe it was September, and looking to get something officially on the school committee agenda, was that once that happened and people started to become aware of what was going on, and I appreciate the gentleman, the few individuals that spoke at a working session, and I also appreciate and I want to thank everyone that came out this evening to speak in favor of starting a group or in favor of just keeping the Dartmouth Indian. That being said, over the past several weeks, several months, let's remember I'm a member of the Dartmouth School Committee. I have constituents, just like all of us on here have to represent. It comes to a really tough decision because in one aspect I see it as, for every person that has reached out to this committee and has stated that they're offended or we really should look to be pragmatic, proactive about moving forward and establishing a committee to change the logo. I have someone else that, like we said, I've spoken to a number of Native Americans that have reached out to me either through email or in person to say we don't, and I'll actually share a quote I have from someone that emailed me this afternoon that they don't find it offensive and they want to open, but what they do want to do is open up talks. They want to open up talks with the Dartmouth Public Schools to see how they can be an asset to us as to really educating the school district more on this topic, and they think it would be a great disservice if we were to get rid of this logo. And this is from someone, I'll just share a very quick little excerpt. This is from Jacob Ventura, Dartmouth High School class of 2005, and Wampanoag Tribe of Gayhead, a Klana member. And it says, please accept this correspondence as part of the public comment period regarding the issue of the Dartmouth Indian that is on the agenda for tonight's school committee meeting. So I'll just share this piece. Additionally, the current Indian head logo used by Dartmouth Public Schools in various forms of publication, including for sports, was designed decades ago by a fellow tribal member in a way that depicted the native Indian in a way that was historically accurate and respectful of the traditions and history of our local history and the tribe's history. So it continues, leads me to the conclusion that Dartmouth Public Schools should maintain the current Indian's name and maintain the current logo. And then he did go on to talk about how it would be great if we could establish and be one of the first in the nation to establish some kind of committee or some kind of open two-way talks with the Wampanoags. And I could go on. I've received over, and as all of us have, received over a couple dozen emails, mostly speaking out in favor of the Dartmouth Indians. But that being said, I'm here tonight to, to really think about it and do what's best for this community, knowing that on one side, this school committee and this school district, we do have a lot of things to worry about, a lot of other things on our radar, especially educating students. We also have the proposed legislation that's tied up right now at the State House. That being said, at this point in time, I don't think I'm going to entertain moving forward with the establishment of a committee. I do think it's important that we continue to have open dialogue with the tribal members, and I'd love to establish some kind of formal relationship with them and sit down across the table. But I think with everything else going on in this district, in this society in general, and from the amount of people that I've spoken to, I'm not in favor of establishing a committee at this time.
And then there was one. Great. I don't really have anything pre-written to talk about. I appreciate everyone coming out. I appreciate everyone's advocacy on either end. I think I've been very forthcoming with those who have reached out and responsive to those who have reached out in favor of and in hopes that we will look to change our logo. And in the cases to change, I have led people to those people that sit on that joint committee on education and said, I understand that what is asked of us is to change it before the Commonwealth decides. And here are the people that you need to talk to. I mean, nobody's going to look at me and say she's not the poster child for advocacy. I really appreciate everyone's effort on either way, however they stand with this issue. With that said, I'm married to a Dartmouth High School graduate, football player, and I'm parent of a Dartmouth High School athlete, and a son who does not have the words to share his pride, but is very clearly prideful of the way in which we utilize our logo for our sports. I feel like sometimes I'd be a little wishy-washy with this, but I've done a lot of thinking and really feel comfortable sitting in a place to, I feel that my number one responsibility as a school committee member is to work toward the mission of our district, which is to educate our children, a high-quality education for all students, all learners. I know the process, and I know that however we vote, whether we vote to to form a committee to discuss things further. I worry that, and I sit sort of in a place where we're going to have to do what we're going to have to do if we're told to by the state. And then I look over our guidelines, our athletic policies, and I also refer back to my experience of being a parent. And from very young, my daughter was a cheerleader for many years, an All-American scholar with our Dartmouth football youth league, and the pride that that came from those wearing green and wearing that logo. You know, I look at our where am I? You know, I look at what we have printed in our athletic guidelines. We say that this symbol shall be used to signify pride and dignity and respect. And I also read that, you know, our athletic department and those that wear, you know, our uniforms, you know, we understand that academic success will be the #1 priority, no matter what sport team you are on. And that Dartmouth High School is extremely proud of our school logo, which represents to us pride, dignity, and respect. And while, you know, while I appreciate what some folks have said, and I certainly like the idea of enhancing and enriching our already existing curriculum around learning about and deepening our respect for those people. My personal feeling as a responsible school committee member is I would not vote to support a committee in advance of hearing how this bill does report out of the joint committee that it's in the State House. So that's my thought.
Do we need a motion to?
I mean, I can count votes. I can understand that I would get a motion and Carol would second it and it would not be voted upon in this member of the committee. That is the will of the committee, but I am extremely disappointed that we're not going to be able to hear on record from our tribal neighbors.
Okay. Superintendent's report.
What's that?
Superintendent.
So next on our is the superintendent's update.
Just thinking, deep in thought.
I know. It's a tough one.
Okay, just a couple of things. I just wanted you to know that, as usual, before we created our MCAS report, we did our usual meeting with all of the schools to kind of talk with them about what their thoughts were, of where their next steps might be, et cetera. And again, it was a good report, and we were pretty pleased with most of the areas, and those little tweaks we'll continue to work on. So. Also, as you know, a number of us attended MassQ last week. We had a good showing from this district, and we're now creating a little document to kind of identify some of the learnings that we all brought back so we can share it with the rest of the staff. And a representative from all the schools also attended. One of our attorneys that we deal with our special ed department, Kat Lyons, did a legal summit last week, so we all attended that. It was a full day of a lot of information, almost too much to take in on one day, but that's how much is happening on that with the special ed law, et cetera, et cetera. I just wanted you to know that I've read all the FYIs from the schools, and they're all busy making Veterans Day cards, which they do every year to send off. The Russell's Mills program has been in full force again, with the grade 3 students visiting that, with Polly's high school students running that. And also, I sent you all an email, and if you're interested at all, there have been some shifts in the superintendent evaluation with rubric, which we have I couldn't remember who's on the subcommittee. I don't know if you remember at all, so we can meet and start doing those goals. But November 25th, the DESI will be running that drive-in session for any committee members that would like to. Kathleen did say she was going to attend, so I did put you in as a registrant. And November 25th. I can resend that to you. It was in one of my emails recently. But, you know, it's just to, as I said, a drive-in session that folks can learn about the new changes to the rubrics, et cetera. And also there is a lot of information on the DESI website, and also some video clips as well. So just let me know. And it's November 25th. And if you want to attend, we can register you. And again, it's not a cost or anything. It's a nice session. I'm sure we get something out of it. And that's about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. No, John can't make it, but yeah, I'm available.
I have an appointment that day.
Look on DESI. There's all. We'll report out anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So report of the chair. Sophia really covered it all. She spoke about the music department, all of the athletic, achievements and what's been going on in the high school. I thought, however, that I would, in lieu of a report, would ask if you would maybe, I don't know if you're prepared to sort of give an update regarding your conversation with Senator Mark Montigny. If you're not, that's fine. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No problem.
And also, maybe we could have a conversation around, should we try again? Representative Markey was available a slew of other dates, but he just didn't happen to have any availability, the availability that we passed on that week. And yes.
So can I just say, I do want to hear about this meeting, but I would prefer that perhaps we save it for a time when it actually is on the agenda.
Okay.
So that people the public who might be interested in hearing about this can either attend or see, right? It is a pretty important subject, and so I just want the public to have a chance to know that we are going to be talking about sort of school finance and where our representatives are, and that way they can either attend or tune in. And then Mr. Nunes can he'll have a fancy slideshow like Miss Roy's, right?
Absolutely.
How about if we
some flashcards?
propose some new dates and see if we can, in the meantime, meet with Representative Markey, a couple of us to, adhere to the open meeting laws, or one of us, however it works out. I apologize for not being available.
Please. Things pop up, ma'am. No problem.
So we can send me some dates again for the next next week or so. We'll try to have Kate work her magic again. Okay, that's right. Not Kate. Kate will not work her magic. She is not in. This weekend. But she's here. Dedication.
Dedication. Thank you for being here.
Or something. I don't know. Okay. Sounds good. Any other matters that were not anticipated?
I do. I've got a couple of things. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to say thank you to town meeting for support of all our capital improvement items. That was fantastic that, they went for the whole town, not only ours, but the whole town. And I mean, nary a question was asked, which was fantastic. So it's like they understood everything that needed, they were all needs. They were, they weren't wants, they were needs. So they approved that. So thank you very much for doing all of that. I know Sophie talked a little bit about what the band is doing, and just to expound on it just a bit, Saturday we were in Naugatuck, Connecticut for the New England State Champs, and the band got a 95-3, and that was the best score of the night. So, we're the Division 5 state champs there. We're in Danbury, Connecticut for a regular U.S. band competition Saturday. We've got NESBA finals in Lawrence on Sunday, a quick turnaround. And then November 9th, which is a Saturday, we get to be down in MetLife for championships again. So, maybe we can make it a four-peat type of deal, which would really be nice. So, and then also, and again, she talked about it, but again, just my personal best to the sports teams as they get into the tournament and finish out the year.
Yes.
Do we have a updated score on the girls volleyball? They won.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations.
Excellent.
They win. What was it?
3-1.
3-1.
3 games to 1.
Beautiful. Undefeated season.
I
Fantastic.
came early to watch, but I really didn't understand the game.
I just want to remind everyone that the Dartmouth Education Foundation Spelling Bee is on November 14th. I know Mr. Pereira's here. I can't remember what tickets do we have for the big door prize?
Yes, we have Boston Celtics tickets.
So if you stay the whole time at the very end of the spelling bee, thanks to Ms. Pereira for securing those, we may be the lucky winner of some Celtics tickets, so we encourage you to come and join the fun with everyone. On the 14th, I think that's at
That's a Thursday.
7 o'clock.
Yeah.
It starts at 7.
Shannon, would you do me a favor?
Yes?
Would you just send me an email to remind you to write the check, please?
I will.
Thank you.
I forgot
Yes,
myself, so I will
okay.
send. The school committee is sponsoring a team, so I will remind all of you to do that.
I usually
Thank
am
you.
the one that forgets.
Oh.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else?
Next meeting.
Okay, yeah. Our next regular meeting of the school committee is scheduled for Monday, November 18th at 6:30, back at Quinn in the school community room. So with that, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session, not to return to regular session, to provide an update with respect to collective bargaining with union personnel. Let's read all of this, right?
Yep.
To consider a vote on the AFSB
AFSME.
cafeteria employees contract, July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2022, and to hear a level 3 grievance from the DEA teachers unit.
So moved.
Roll call.
No, you
Oh.
need a second.
second.
Okay.
Carol Karafotis. Yes. John Nunes.
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral.
Yes.
Chris Oliver.
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins.
Yes.
Adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.